World War II was not just the most destructive conflict in the history of humanity, it was also the greatest theft in history.
When the Nazi regime came to power during World War II, they tragically plundered historically significant European artwork, claiming it for their own. As time went on and the regime became weaker, the art was recovered by Allied powers working to restore the culture that the Nazis had obliterated. While these efforts were triumphant, they were largely incomplete, and many groups today are still working to recover and return this art. Adolf Hitler was a rejected artist and the only dictator of his era to pay attention to the aesthetic of his rule. As an art enthusiast, he planned to open a museum in Linz, Austria to be a showpiece of his regime. It was to hold centuries of European works. Hermann Göring, the second in command, enjoyed the chase of the object more than the value of it and began to collect art in 1936. Works meant for museums, such as Linz, were kept in storage buildings such as the Jeu de Paume in France, which was built after the Nazis gained control there. When paintings were pillaged, they were sent here to be sorted and stored. If a painting wasn't chosen for Linz or a similar gallery, it would be sent to a smaller German museum. If a painting was deemed too modern and therefore degenerate, it would be sold at an auction. Perhaps the largest organization involved in the systematic looting of art was the Einsatzstab Reichsleiter Rosenberg, or the ERR, led by Alfred Rosenberg and created in June 1940. In September of that year, an order from the Führer came, giving the ERR
the right to confiscate precious objects and to transport them to Germany.
Because Hitler's word was law, this legally gave the ERR the right to steal Jewish art pieces and use them for their own purposes. They gave the impression that they were safeguarding or securing the art as they ruthlessly stole it. Thousands of objects were seized by the ERR throughout Europe. On March 12, 1938, the Nazi regime annexed Austria. In mere days, Hitler began to acquire works for the Linz Museum. When he invaded Poland, important non-Polish art was dispatched immediately, including the altarpiece of Weizdas in Krakow, which was considered one of the world's greatest pieces of art. In Russia, he managed to demolish thousands of Eastern European museums, churches, and synagogues.
The destruction of Poland has priority, Hitler said. I shall give a propagandist reason for starting the war, no matter whether it is plausible or not. Close your hearts to pity. Act brutally.
The Führer was not as adamant that the culture of Western Europe be destroyed. He started to prepare for Italy's works of art as early as 1937. His advisors identified Italy's most desirable pieces, including Lancelotti di Scobulis. While it was difficult, the Führer managed to convince Italian officials to allow him a private sale and export of the piece. Other artworks followed this same path until September 1943, when Italy surrendered to the Allies. Hitler needed a new way to continue to capture the art, so he feigned that he was safeguarding them from the American army and began to openly steal them. A combination of time and pressure from both Italy and the US led to extreme desperation. Nazis hurriedly removed important art pieces from storage spaces, loaded them onto open-top trucks with scant packaging, and retreated into Austria with over 500 paintings. They were caught red-handed 25 miles from the Austrian border by Italian specialists and officers from the Monuments Men. On June 23, 1943, Franklin D. Roosevelt agreed to the formation of the Roberts Commission after Chairman Supreme Court Justice Owen J. Roberts. This organization created the Monuments, Fine Arts, and Archives Program, or the MFA&A, which eventually became known as the Monuments Men. Full of volunteer intellects, their purpose was to examine, repair, and report on monuments that needed to be protected. As they started to work, they realized that German soldiers had been stealing paintings and started investigating and attempting to uncover them. Over 1,000 repositories containing stolen goods were found in Germany, Italy, and Austria.
No historical grievance will rankle so long or be the cause of so much justified bitterness as the removal of a part of the heritage of any nation.
Rose Valland, a curator at the Jeu de Paume who understood German, secretly memorized Nazi conversations and documented their distribution of art. She directed MFA&A officers to the Neuschwanstein Castle in Germany, where they discovered a large amount of stolen artwork. The Monuments Men triumphantly discovered many more repositories, one of the biggest being in Altalsee, Austria. They discovered over 6,500 paintings, thousands of drawings, 2 Vermeer paintings, and a Michelangelo sculpture. As these works continued to be uncovered, collecting points were formed to ship them to their home countries. The contents of the Neuschwanstein castle were shipped to Paris, and the Weizstall's altarpiece was returned to Poland.
By the time the last Monuments men left Europe to go back to the States, they had returned 5 million objects.
Both tragedy and triumph are prevalent today as organizations comprehend the troubled past of their possessions and make decisions regarding their future. Said in an interview with historian Dr. Anne Rothfeld,
"The restitution of Nazi-confiscated artworks involves complex issues. Owners and evidence that may have not survived, statutes of limitations and jurisdictional issues, and purchases by good faith buyers."
To prevent unethical ownership, 44 countries signed the Washington Principles in 1998, 11 guidelines requiring museums to fairly research and restitute stolen artwork. Despite these efforts, many organizations refuse to justly return art, tragically forcing claimants to embark on long, expensive legal battles and, in many cases, lose their rightful property. Marie von Sayer, the daughter-in-law of a Dutch art dealer, claimed the $24 million paintings Adam and Eve by Lucas Cranach the Elder, which were in the possession of the Norton Simon Museum. These paintings were uncovered by the Monuments Men and returned to the Dutch government, who set a 1951 deadline for owners to claim their works. After a plea from von Sayer to the Dutch government failed, she appealed to California courts, who ruled in the museum's favor, acting through state doctrine, which stated that they could not invalidate the Dutch's decisions.
In light of the U.S. government policy strongly urging the restitution of Nazi-looted artworks to the victims' families, it is particularly disturbing that the court would permit these paintings to remain in the museum.
In a statement, the museum responded,
"The court's decision is based on the merits considering the facts and law at the heart of the dispute."
In a separate case, in 1998, it was discovered that the Austrian gallery did not have a valid claim to Adele Bloch-Bauer I, a painting that they had held for years. After retrieving the painting from Nazi clutches, the museum contended that the original owner, Miss Bloch-Bauer, had given the portrait to them in her will. The painting actually belonged to Maria Altmann, an American citizen. When Altmann was tragically rejected by the Austrian restitution panel, she turned to the U.S. Supreme Court, who in 2004 decided it in her favor and gave her the painting.
It's kind of the symbol of how the court of public opinion, at the end of the day, has more importance than a legal court.
Despite the continuation of this tragedy, some organizations firmly believe in returning art to its true owners. Jakob and Rosa Oppenheimer were persecuted Jews forced to flee Germany in 1933. In 2010, the Philadelphia Museum of Art realized that an Italian tapestry they owned had been stolen from the Oppenheimers. They contacted the heirs and settled finances in May 2010.
It wasn't an object that they actually wanted to get back. It's a 17-foot tall tapestry, so not many people could, display that in their house. We felt that we didn't have, moral right to keep this without that kind of settlement with the claimants.
Sylvie Slitzer, the heir of Dufem Dan Unjaren, was especially ecstatic when she received the painting from the Museum of Jewish Heritage.
It's an amazing decision, and I am very thankful to show my beloved family that after all what they've been through, there is a justice.
It truly is the last wish of this veteran. What's keeping them alive is finding a way to return this item that they know they took, and usually when then they return the item, it's for them one of the happiest moments in their life. Just a small example, it was this 92-year-old veteran in Chicago that had taken 8 books from a bombed church in Italy. He passed away a few weeks after returning the books, as if that was what he was there to do, and after the books had been returned, he had accomplished his last wish.
As Dr. Rothfeld said,
artwork is the last victim of World War II.
Organizations such as the Monuments Men Foundation, Commissioned for Looted Art in Europe, and Art Recovery International are trying to avenge this victim. They help restitute artwork to its rightful owner with minimal or no cost. Though the Nazis forced devastating tragedies on art, hardworking organizations work tirelessly to restore it to their true owners. These organizations, which have existed since the looting, show that caring, compassionate people will always triumph over the evil that dares to threaten them.